I have some friends that record in New York, and they're telling me that there's this resurgence of not even tuning, like the tuners, where everybody goes in with the tuners, and like, go hit a note on the piano and tune to that. That's close enough.
That's what we did.
Well, that's what everybody did. You know, if you, and I know you know this, but and most of our audience does, but there's a lot of people out there that are from my generation and older that don't know that we record to a computer. We no longer record, for the most part, to tape, although there are some guys like Dave Cobb and Mark Knopfler and people like that are grabbing, they got old tape machines and they're bringing them back. And so there's two camps, but anyway, you can take a grid. They call it a grid. The computer can go. They can move your fills. They can do all this stuff. So, what makes a guy unique in his phrasing style can get changed because they just line it up to where it's just perfectly timed. And then now there's a thing called Melodyne.
This may be old news in 20 years when this is played.
Well, yeah, but and that's great. But then they'll know we're what we were seeing. But so there's all these things on what Melodyne can do. It's new technology, and it's been around for a few years, but it can dissect the tuning in a track. Now, not only are they tuning with tuners and getting everything straight, but this Melodyne, after the fact, if something sounds out to a producer or an engineer, they've got the ability with this tool. They can go in, if it's a triad played on a guitar or steel or the string section or whatever, they can go. The thing will say, okay, the fifths are out of tune, the thirds are out of tune. They can tune the chord. And all of a sudden, you know, you make something that wasn't perfect, absolutely perfect. And Chet was asked a question, and I love this. At first, I took it wrong, and I'll be very honest. And because he said it before Melodyne and these things came out, but someone asked him, what do you think about technology? And his comment was, technology allowed mediocrity to rise to the surface. And I thought, oh, that's a kind of but that's actually maybe brutally honest, but it is. And we're in a time where I'm concerned, you know, about especially steel players, you know, that's what this is about. And where people decide, especially this is arguably one of the most difficult instruments, but no matter what you play, I think, you know, you want the basic elements. Like when you take away the ability of, or the separation from a player who knows how to play in tune, and, you know, if you can eventually hook a Melodyne, there's an app or a pedal now, you click on your Melodyne and you put your bar just relatively close and you're in tune. You take a guy that sounds like this. Then the Melodyne takes them to there. I worry about that because then you know, it's kind of like, you know, what if our power grids go off and all of our cars and our computers stop working? So there's an very old school element to my thought process. I think that, and so I've stressed what I feel, but how does this strike you with the technology, and have you got any thoughts on it? Or
yeah, I mean, certainly. First, I would agree with Chet, and I think what he was expressing was that it does allow mediocrity. That means that just as you were doing, that the players don't have to be as good. They don't have to be in tune, and they don't have to concentrate. If they lose that ability to do that, then it becomes the format for the players of the future. If they don't feel like they got to play in tune, or they don't have to play anything very well,
yeah,
and it does allow mediocrity to arise, I think. And I don't think that we have to be perfectly in tune. I don't think
I don't
steel
either.
guitar is ever perfectly in tune anyway, because for the steel players that are watching this, and there's a lot of confusion. They don't understand why they don't sound in tune with the bands. Well, you can tune it where your ears tell you as well as you can tune it, and then you sit with the band, and it may sound flat, it may sound sharp, but that's because this is the ultimate determinant. This is what's going to keep you in tune with the band, and that's what I always. You got to use your ear with a band and with musicians.
Yeah.
And if more than one is not playing in tune, then you have to. You still got this latitude with this bar And you can still always sound in tune if you're pretty well in tune when you start.
Yeah. I'm gonna test that example. I'm gonna play out of tune. Now match me. Let's say I know I'm out of tune. Do you? Look where my bar is. I'm in between the frets, so he's playing.
Well, I am too, actually.
But his ears are. That's the point.
I listen with my ears. Yes,
Yeah.
wherever you're at. So
And so I'm further up. It's harder there because I'm so far out of tune.
Yeah, well, I really am in between the frets now.
And I'm completely between the frets. But the point is that you always have to trust your ears. It's never you look at, well, I'm here, and you don't stay so rigid.
Well, in the recording studio, we don't ever get that far.
Oh, no, never.
I mean, nobody ever gets that far out of tune. It's going to be microscopic. It might be, they might be tuned 441 or 2, or they won't be too far from the norm.
Yeah.
If they go way beyond, then everybody would say, "What man, you're way out of tune."
Yeah.
And nobody's going to tune to that. So you're working within parameters that are pretty narrow with the bar, and it's really it doesn't intimidate me anymore. I often go in where I've got to play flat or sharp, and I just, rather than spend 5 or 10 minutes trying to retune this thing, I might just play the whole session with the bar sharp or flat. As long as it isn't too far away from the
Too
fret.
far. I did go. I would just I took it too far, but that's still the point, is that you have the point I was trying to make is that by training your ears, you have the ability to process wherever that is, the center of pitch. And
yes. Well, we had, now it gets back to the tuners you're talking about.
Yeah.
When I started recording full-time, my career really launched in 1964, after Easter '64. There were no tuners. I don't remember any, there were no tuners around.
Yeah.
And so I would get my E off the piano, and guitar players did. And somewhere around 1967 or 7 or 8 maybe, I walked in Columbia studio one day, and everybody had this new tuner, called a strobe tuner, and they sat about this tall, about this wide, and had this little thing spinning around, and Bobby Thompson was the rhythm player that day, our greatest banjo player of the era, and he had become my favorite rhythm player too of the era by then. But he spent, and everybody else, the electric player, whoever was playing, but I watched them the entire session, and they weren't looking at it. We weren't talking anymore, having dialogue or communicating. They were watching that strobe the entire session, and I thought, man, I don't want this. I mean, I don't want it for myself. So I made that determination that I wasn't going to get it, and I've consequently never used a tuner, but I'm way out. You know, there are situations where it's impossible not to have a tuner now, which is live gigs, which most of the players are going to be involved in, playing in the band. And so this was only applicable to sessions where you had a quieter environment, but even then it gets tough. And there are situations, I guess, a tuner has to be used, but I don't own a tuner, so I'm the reprobate of the entire steel guitar community.
I don't think so. I think your point is like playing in tune and training your ear. You know, like never losing sight of that. You never lost sight of that. You never. I think tuners became a crutch.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, just because then if you had something telling you were perfectly in tune, then you relaxed. And it's that relaxing that's not, I don't think that's a good thing on any instrument. It's knowing that, you know, you always depend on your ears. And because even on a guitar, if the fret's here and you press your finger, you put your finger right there and you press down on that thing, that fret, because of the angle of the string, that's going to be sharper than it is if you put your finger here. So there's the precision on a fretted instrument has to be precise as well. So there are all those elements that a tuner's not going to get you there.
Well, those elements are also part of our playing to be in tune, and also the way we approach playing. All the players that sound like they're uniform across the board on their. Now, your guitar probably doesn't do this, but my showbud, for instance, that third string is going to sound thin if I don't make a little extra pressure on the front of my bar to make. Here's what it. So I always apply just a little more pressure if I'm using the first, the third and fifth string. Well, it sounds a little.
No, it does.
Right
I could hear the difference between.
But the pressure we apply with the bar is something we use to try to stay in tune with, and also to increase the intonation, the evenness of the intonation, and the spread of the strings, which gives a more harmonic, pleasant sound to my ear. That's why. Eventually, from the Little Darling era, where I was using the, and the Warner Mac stuff, I went to the mid-range sound. And only because it sounded better to my ears, but then a lot of people said, well, you don't have that fire anymore in your playing, and perhaps that's true because with maturity and a little age, I guess you want to hear it with a prettier tone instead of a harsh tone. But
I don't. I think that it all goes. I don't know if it's age as much as I know you do like to hear the pretty, but it's also, you're playing different songs, and when people say you don't have that fire, but you're not also playing Ride, 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 and you're not playing those kind of songs. It's music. It evolves, and the players have to.
Evolution, yes, and
you have to evolve.
We all evolved with it, or either we didn't have a career.
Well, that's why you had a long career, because you had the ability to. You saw the trends. And you go, okay, it's kind of shifting now. I need to shift something here.
And I think I did it without being consciously aware of it. It was just part of the evolutionary process, and it just seemed natural. It was such a slow process that I realized. I can hear the records in retrospect and realize that I had changed as the times changed too. But then there was a question of how are you going to sound are you going to sound the same way with every artist, or are you going to have a different approach? And I have no idea why I did, but I listened to, I think it's because of the songs and the singer. But if I listen to those songs and listen to the singer, I'm going to always make my approach based on that. And if we struck a sound, then we stuck with the sound in the era when it was cool. I think after Easy Lovin', the next 11 records probably sounded, they have an Easy Lovin' flavor to it.
Yeah, it's Freddie Hart sound.
They've developed a sound. Warner Mac's Bridge Washed Out. Well, the next record was called Sitting on a Rock. That sounded very similar, except it didn't go number one. He only had the one.
That was my favorite, I got to tell you.
Well, and it worked well because I had that double neck Bigsby, because it would operate like a guitar more than it would a steel. I can't make this one do.
Yeah, that's cool.
It won't quite. Grady liked it because it was sort of what he would do and that kind of thing. And but it was also where I was muting the strings so much,
That's cool. Well, that's the you're like.
I know we've talked about.
No, but that's really cool. I noticed that when you play that way, you
get as close to the pickup as you can, and you got to.
Well, you're using your palm more than you do normally.
I didn't know what. I think all of us incorporate a certain amount of pick blocking just automatically if we're muting, but I didn't think of it as. I always thought of it as palm blocking for me, and it predominantly was. And I know for you introduced a better way to do it and have more speed, of course, with the pick blocking, getting away from this.
But you and I have never talked about blocking other than just a few statements here and there, but. Pick blocking got named by Hal Rugg. He became
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Well, and it's not the way I block.
Even more ironic.
Yeah. This is, well, because he when I played the Opry was my first gig with Barbara Mandrell, and I was sitting there, you know, playing, and she was doing fast songs. So and I was playing things like that kind of thing, and so he watched it. And then I started teaching. I think I was about 19.
Wow.
I started teaching at the house because I was starving. You know, I would not take the jobs that paid, and everybody remember in those days, Opry acts would disband in the winter and then start up unless you were lucky enough to be with Loretta Lynn or Conway or a few high-paying gigs. But I wasn't that lucky, so I taught, and Hal called me up out of the blue and said, "Can I get a lesson? I want to learn your right hand." And Hal had decided, made a conscious effort that he was going to do it. And he said, "How are you blocking?" And I said, "Oh, I'm blocking with palm." "No, you're not. You're not blocking with your palm." And then, because I never really thought about it. And so anyway, he said, "You're blocking with your picks," because he was watching me put them down. But here's what I'm blocking with.
So you are getting the blocking effect with your fingers.
With my fingers. Yeah, well, I'm doing like everybody does this. Everybody calls pick blocking when they teach legato block. And they go, now you're blocking. I can lift it in my hands. But that's not really blocking. If you let the note ring into the next note, that's called legato.
Yes.
I mean, even the notes do stop. But if you block, I'm not blocking that. I'm blocking with the back of my thumb. I've analyzed it for this whole thing. And I've gone, that's what I'm doing. I'm not doing it. And, you know, I didn't analyze it. And so when Hal did, I wasn't going to question Hal Rugg. And he was just by visual. But he actually got it because he tried to block with his picks and he kept on holding his hand like a palm block and he couldn't get it. He was saying, "How do you kill that first string?" And I said, the only thing I knew, I said, "You got to web these." And I didn't think about it. That's all I said. Well, this is the way I do it. I don't do this.
Well, you had automatically learned all this because it was what you needed to play the speed and the type stuff you were going to play, and that was.
I was isolated, like you were.
Yeah, so it was wonderful that nobody said, "Well, that's not palm blocking or anything. That's pick blocking." You'd have started thinking about it early on, but you were already you had introduced a whole new way to do this. And
so the whole thing, this whole myth of pick blocking that's out there, and guys are teaching, saying, "Well, Paul said this and this, blah blah blah," and I did teach early on, and just called it pick blocking. Mm-hmm. And because I did these audio tapes before this streaming, that's why I'm so thankful that this is now, because a lot of things get corrected, you know. And so what I'm doing, and it's interesting because Buddy put his finger down here, so he blocked a lot of his stuff was blocked with this ring finger. And it's not mentioned in the books that like Winnie's book and different things, but that's how he blocked. He blocked with this and in the palm of his hand, and you block, you know, like you just said, you do pick blocking. So we all kind of. We're kind of using, it's almost like fingertip blocking in a way. You either use the back side of your thumb. See, I don't have to use my palm because this is happening.
Sure.
So this is getting all this as I move forward, and this gets all this as I move backwards. So that's all my technique is. And then, but there's pictures of me playing like this, and I used to get the same thing accomplished. But it was because this finger was always staying with it, and then I just finally curled. Once I did that, it all became simple.